We are iConnections, and it's time to talk about change. To work together and rebalance our global systems. To create a more equitable world for everyone. To celebrate women and their achievements. Acknowledge their trials and their triumphs. To challenge biases and recognize that the leadership of women is essential. We choose to invest in our future because equality is non-negotiable for investment. And change emerges from leadership. We must overcome discrimination, challenge gender inequality, and balance our responsibilities.
Every challenge comes with a choice.
I choose to challenge.
I choose to challenge.
We choose to challenge.
I'm delighted to introduce today's Fireside Chat with Bumble CEO, Whitney Wolfe Herd. This session is sponsored by Brown Advisory, an investment management firm committed to first-class performance, strategic advice, and the highest level of client services, with institutional and private clients based in 39 countries worldwide. Today's session gives us the inside track on what it truly takes to choose to challenge in technology startups as a female executive. Whitney Wolfe Herd is an American entrepreneur. She's the founder and CEO of social and dating app Bumble, and was an early executive at Tinder. This year, she became the world's youngest female self-made billionaire after taking Bumble public. In the interviewer's seat is David Fiszel, the founder and chief investment officer of Honeycomb Asset Management, an investment management firm focused on innovation. We hope you enjoy this insightful session.
Welcome everyone to today's very special Fireside Chat with Bumble's founder and CEO, Whitney Wolfe Herd. Thank you to our hosts at iConnections and Brown Advisory for sponsoring this really important discussion. Hi Whitney, I am very excited to talk to you today about your experience as a female founder in tech. The Choose to Challenge is the theme of the International Women's Day this year, and we're going to be talking about how you choose to challenge.
Perfect. Hi.
Hi. Well, look, I mean, what a year you've had. You know, entrepreneurs all over the world have been inspired by your story. I was curious, have you always been entrepreneurial?
That's a great question. I think it's a hard question to ask, because when you're out dreaming and doing and creating, you don't really think about things that way. But I think so. I think you either have this desire to go and change things in society and to go create things you wish existed, or maybe sometimes people don't have that desire. And I think that's really what defines an entrepreneur. It's not necessarily have you started a business, it's have you identified something you dislike in society, or have you identified the opportunity to improve something, and have you gone and tried to improve it or gone and tried to change it. And I think entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes, but that's really the one common thread, in my opinion.
No, that's terrific. I mean, you made history for those listening. It's really impressive to us at Honeycomb as being the youngest woman to take a company public in America. Your son Bo will always be remembered being at your side for that historic launch, which it was just a wonderful moment. What will you tell him about leadership and this female empowerment movement you're helping to lead?
Yeah, I think it definitely was a surreal moment. And I hope by the time he's old enough to understand the situation, it will just be part of the norm that a woman is taking a company public, but that she might also be a mother, and she might also be juggling all of these other facets of her life. And so hopefully when he hears the story, he's like, cool, yeah, that I saw that on TV yesterday and today and the day before. But I think that, the reality is we as women have not always been encouraged to take the same risks that men have been encouraged to take, or we haven't always been given the societal permission or the family permission to go out and to try to fail. because the reality of starting a business or starting anything is really the only thing it is an attempt to fail. Like you're just going out and trying, right? And there's risk involved. And I'm not entirely sure that we as women have been told to take risk, whether that's even playing on the playground in a way that a young boy was told they could play on the playground. And so I think that, you know, the permission to go out and try and the permission to fail is something I hope has, you know, I hope it will continue to be normalized, because that's really all I'm doing every day and all I've been doing for the last several years. And I hope other women know that they can do that too.
No, I think that's really helpful. As a single dad with 4 little kids, I'll be telling that to my young girl. You know, when she's you know, being told by her brothers that she's being bossy, I said, you know, if she was a boy, you'd say she's being a leader. Like, it's not fair, right? This is really what I see as what some of the things that you're doing that is so inspiring. You know, as you think about your strategies for that personal growth and professional growth, what have they been? How did you get here?
Well, I think, you know, the strategy is really to just believe in yourself, right? Even when you are super insecure or you're feeling really down on yourself, you have to tap into that internal belief system and just say, I believe in what I'm doing. And I think when you just stay committed to changing or fixing what you don't like in society. Maybe you see something your friends are going through you don't like, or you've watched your parents suffer with something. As long as you stay anchored to improving that thing, all of the other stuff becomes noise. And so, for example, with Bumble, when I really wanted to put the power of dating into the hands of women, I was thinking about, you know, my mom, my friends, these women I knew, women around the world that just were never given control over their relationships. And so even as all the noise and all the people said it was wrong and stupid and would never work, you know, I just stayed anchored on the fact that they needed that. And that was something that would improve things for them. And by staying so committed to that issue and to solving that, all of a sudden you create these blinders and you can just kind of stay focused on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's such a great segue just to talk about Bumble. And I really want the audience to hear about it and its origin story. For us at Honeycomb, when we think about what's in a name, Honeycomb is named after a scalable, repeatable, natural, organic process. And it's inspired by those worker bees that are so collaborative and have this amazing ability to communicate to create that perfect geometric shape. What's the inspiration behind Bumble's name?
Well, and by the way, I love the name of Honeycomb. That was the best name. I think it's a great name. And Bumble's not so far away from that. You know, obviously we did not, it was a little more serendipitous. We didn't select the name Bumble because of some deep meaning, but when we actually looked at the meaning of the word, it became perfect. So when we thought about the word Bumble for this product where women were in control and they made the first move, and it was also supposed to be a kind collaborative ecosystem, right? This technology product that would encourage good behavior, kindness, accountability. All of a sudden the name made so much sense because of the queen bee, right? In this society of bees, you have a queen bee, but there is a respectful community. The bees work together and they're very collaborative and it's a kind ecosystem. They don't set out to destroy each other. And it's a very special ecosystem. And, you know, when you started to play both with the meaning of the queen bee and how that fit into a hive, you know, Bumble's all about building a hive, building your connections, building relationships, but healthy and equitable ones. And that just felt so perfect. And then when you pair that with the brandability and the branding opportunity of find your honey on Bumble, or be the queen bee of your life, you know, it just made so much sense. And it became this absolute, you know, kind of golden opportunity to build a true brand with purpose.
I love it. I mean, I see exactly how it applies to your business. And I think that as we think about our audience, you know, there may be members who haven't, you know, used one of the apps, and you've actually pioneered. So I thought it'd be good to take a moment to help them explain why is dating apps such a powerful force in society. And you and I have talked about it, and I always learn so much about it from you. So if you could just tell the audience a little bit about why is dating apps the right way to go and becoming so popular?
Yeah, sure. So I think we can all agree universally that the most important part of all of our lives are our relationships, right? And not just our romantic ones, but our friendships and our business relationships. We are creatures that thrive and live and need relationships. And the reality without technology is you have to quite literally be in the right place at the right time to meet people to build relationships with. So what ends up happening is your opportunity for relationships are quite limited, right? You rely on a friend of a friend, or you rely on a family member to introduce you to someone. And the power of technology is that it just expands your opportunity. It gives you such an opportunity to meet people that you actually want to meet, people that can have things in common with you, and the opportunity to actually be particular and to be very measured in who you're looking for doesn't exist in real life. You can't go into a coffee shop and say, I only want someone who's Jewish, and I only want someone who wants children, and
Right.
you don't get to pick and choose like that. But on a dating app, you can quite literally filter for people that fit the criteria of what you're interested in. And so the power of technology is so remarkable. And we have seen this take shape in the who I know category for years. If you look at social media more broadly, think of Facebook or Instagram, the power of staying in touch with the people we know has changed our lives. But what's even more exciting is the opportunity to meet people you don't know yet. And that's the power of dating apps. And the power of Bumble, in our opinion, is that it changes the paradigm of how we meet even more broadly. I mean, around the world, women have been trained from day one to wait. We've been told, wait for the man to approach you, wait for him to select you, wait for him to like you, wait for him to ask you out, wait for him to talk to you. And by agreeing to this waiting process, you give away all your power. And it really sets the relationship off on unequal footing. And so the power of Bumble is that we actually get to say, hey, we don't like that piece of society. We don't like that rule. Let's tweak it. Let's actually change the way that works. And let's set it off on a different path. And so when the woman makes the first move on Bumble, not only has she had the opportunity to say, I only want someone like this, 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 and this, and to find my perfect someone, but I'm going to make the first move and I'm going to be in control of this situation. Boom, technology can change society. And so that's really the power of dating apps.
I believe everything you're saying, and it's so interesting watching the next generation take that approach. It's just a wonderful thing. I mean, you crossed the 100 million user mark last summer, and you really can see. And our mission at Honeycomb is to invest in the future and short the past. And you've been such a great leader in helping that. I have to ask, like, COVID is something that couldn't have been in anyone's business plan. So again, as a founder, as a leader, especially when in such a complicated situation as dating. Can you talk to us about how you navigated those uncertainties from a founder perspective? And then, of course, I think we all want to know, like, what kind of trends have you seen, just because that's such a unique period of time?
Sure. So COVID, you're right. Nobody could have seen this coming. I happen to be on the more paranoid side of things sometimes. And so I did two things when I felt COVID approaching. I ordered a lot of baby formula and sent out an email to every single employee. And I said, I want every single person to come up with a digital only strategy. What does this business look like if events are gone, if going out is gone, if leaving your house is gone? I want your backup plan. And I think half of the company probably thought I was a little crazy. It's like, why are we going to worst case scenario here? And this was early. This had to have been February. So really before, a lot of the world shut down. And we pivoted really quickly. Our field team, our ambassador team, everyone really came up with a strategy to lean into the digital first approach. So quick example, if we had historically done a lot of Bumble events or Bumble parties, we were looking at ways to do that digitally. So how could we throw a digital dinner party? How could we have, these alternatives to these otherwise very social outings? And something fascinating started to happen. both from a teamwork perspective, but also from a trend perspective. As COVID really ramped up and the gravity of it all really started to sink in, we saw a couple things happen. One, efficiency from a team standpoint. We were able to really understand the efficiency that existed when you went to the future, to borrow your words, when you really did think more futuristic in terms of marketing distribution strategies or content distribution strategies or things like that. And then the trend started to really kick into high gear, which was the audience started looking to the future. So we had this feature in our product since 2019, which was video chatting. This was a feature we really believed in and had a lot of conviction in pre-pandemic even being a thought. But the audience hadn't really started to use this. And we were perplexed with, why doesn't anybody want to video date? It's such an easy way to get to know each other. You don't have to meet a stranger right away. You can see if you have chemistry. It's like this awesome opportunity that layers in safety and accountability. And no one really was taking to it. So when the pandemic really sunk in, all of a sudden that video chat metric just went through the roof, but just through the roof. On average, people were having 30-minute first video dates. And it's just, the way the world kind of accepted technology, I think it accelerated 3 to 5 years in the future from a trend standpoint. So it was really fascinating.
I mean, what was some of the feedback you got from your users during that period? It was just how so their dating experience changed, their online dating experience changed. You're helping lead that change. Was there some of your favorite feedback you received that you could share?
Yeah, so I definitely heard amazing stories, but one of my favorite stories was, they always come out of the stories of the people that maybe pre-COVID didn't want to use a dating app. So I think there was this wild thing that took place where COVID destigmatized online dating. So you still had a big chunk of the population who was like, I don't need a dating app. I like to go the old fashioned way or whatever, and all of a sudden those opportunities were off the table. You couldn't go out to a bar or to a restaurant or out with your friends and meet someone across the room. So all of a sudden, this group of individuals that didn't want to be on a dating app, all of a sudden were on a dating app. And not only were they on a dating app, they were falling in love with dating apps. So this is the greatest thing ever. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? Like, we have told you about this for several years, but they all started gravitating towards it. So my favorite stories were the stories of hope and inspiration, where you had these devastating situations. I heard of a woman who tragically lost her husband during COVID. It was not because of COVID, but it just happened to fall during the same time. And it was a long time coming, but it was quite devastating. And she thought her life was over. And a few months later, one of her girlfriends convinced her to get on Bumble. And so she did. And she matched with this lovely man. And they had several video dates, like I think they did, like date nights where they would cook the same thing at their respective homes, and they would get on video and they would really get to know each other. And then after they got their negative test and they did their quarantine and the whole, kind of mandate, they ended up having a socially distanced picnic outside. And they fell madly in love, and they're now married. Wow. And they had this like amazing second chance. And there was so many stories like this of, second chances and hope and new beginnings in this otherwise really dark moment in history. And so those stories have been really exciting.
No, that's so rewarding. I have to ask you a slight pivot as a female entrepreneur. When you think about and I think I first talked to Bumble, I think in 2017, and it's just such an amazing story about the challenges that you had to overcome. Even to build this company, Bumble, and your background. Do you think you can share some of that with us? Some of those challenges that you found as a female entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think, to be an entrepreneur in general is really hard. Female, male, or otherwise, it's really hard to build a business because everyone tells you no. And that's why that business doesn't exist, is because nobody else saw the opportunity, which is great, right? To some degree, there's benefit there. But this constant feeling of being underestimated can be taxing, and it can be exhausting. And you can start feeling that you're not going to make it. And so the challenges that I've seen over the years have been, across the spectrum, ranging from people telling me they don't believe in me as a person. I'd gone through a very high profile kind of, legal situation that catapulted into this whole media debacle. The media, likes to take those things and run with it. And so all of a sudden I woke up at 24 years old as this like character on the internet that people were calling every name you could imagine. And I had the entire social media following that I had, small or otherwise, sending me the most atrocious things. And I was so devastated by it. And that behavior has continued. I mean, even after the IPO, reading commentary on LinkedIn and stuff, like the comments are just atrocious. And I think you have this opportunity as an entrepreneur. You have two choices. You can either take that feedback and let it destroy you, or you can take it and let it motivate you and inspire you and turn it into this like propeller and this like, fuel. And that's really just the only option you have. And I've tried to subscribe to that over the years.
Amazing. It's such a great story. And I just wanted others to hear it too. And I think we'll talk a little bit about the tech industry in general and some of those interactions that you had. Why do you think people single out tech as a problematic space for gender diversity?
Yeah, it's a loaded question, and there's a lot of different, call it theories on it, but I'll never forget. So I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. And when I was in the 7th or the 8th grade at a public school in Salt Lake City, the girls did home ec and most of the boys did computer class. Sure. And I remember thinking, well, I kind of want to do computer class, but that wasn't really part of the program. And so, we carried around sugar babies. Literally, that was part of our curriculum. We had to keep a sugar baby alive, like a fake baby, and feed it and change its diapers. And we had to learn how to make tuna fish sandwich and do all these things that, a housewife would do. And this is not that long ago. I'm 31 years old. So we're not talking like this is 75 years ago. This is not that long ago. And so when you program a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl that way, why, when she's 18, would she feel inspired to drop out of college or not go to college and take on computer engineering? Why would she go into a STEM job like that? We just weren't told to do that. Yeah. And not only that, but when a young woman fails, she's considered a failure, right? But when a young man gets out there and tries and falls down and scrapes his knee, figuratively or otherwise, he's strong and he's brave and he's cool. And so this applies to the workforce. So, these men, the fact that I'm the youngest woman that took a company public is quite sad. I am young, but it's not like I'm 19. And you've had a lot of young guys in their early 20s go public, right? I don't know how old Zuckerberg and those guys were, but they were young. And it's because they didn't have the same societal pressures put on them. If a young woman had sat in her dorm and coded a product and tried to drop out of school, that doesn't really sound realistic 10 years ago. And so that's really why I think you struggle. And then not only that, but there are a lot of talented women out there, like really talented engineers, really talented product minds. And if you're not building products for women, it's hard. I think a lot of people struggle to make seat at the table for women. And so what we're trying to do at Bumble is we're trying to actually put women in charge at all of these different levels, right? And so how can we make sure that there are women in our sectors of business that maybe historically have been filled by men? And we're not perfect. We have a long way to go. Our engineering metrics are not perfect. But I think it's just committing to doing better in the future. And that's how all of us collectively, as this one big tech hive, right? All of us can make a difference in the future.
I think that's such a great answer. And it talks to some of the things that I think people, want to hear about. You talk about values-based innovation at Bumble, even in what you just said. What does that mean? Like, where are those responsibilities, do you feel, as a tech entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think technology has consequences, right? When you build something that a lot of people can use, you are responsible. and you have to be responsible. If you are going to create something, creating something comes with great responsibility, and it's on you to create something that does something better for the planet or for somebody. And what we have tried to do is solve the problems that women have struggled with online. So for example, if women have felt bombarded or harassed on dating platforms or other platforms out there, we have tried to thoughtfully engineer solutions to that. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. Do people still get harassed on Bumble? Yes, that's human nature. But it's how you respond to the things when they happen that counts, right? It's what you do about it. So we recognize, I'll give you a quick example of how to build with intention and values at the helm. We recognize this really mega problem over the last few years, which is a lot of women were receiving unsolicited lewd photos online. They were getting spammed with these really inappropriate photos that they weren't asking for, and it was really disruptive to their mental health, and is just not right. It's wrong. And when you look at the digital versus the physical, I mean, they're just mimics of each other. They're still real humans behind that screen doing these things. And if you were to think about somebody exposing themselves in the street, they would go to jail. That would be indecent exposure. They would actually be arrested for that behavior. But all of a sudden you put it behind a screen and nothing happens, and it becomes funny to these people, right? And so we were really disturbed by this. So we did two things. One, we built a feature called Private Detector, which has over 98% accuracy of being able to determine if a photo is inappropriate or not. And if we believe it is, we give you a warning not to open the image, and we give you the opportunity to block and report that customer so that we can help prevent that person from doing it to others. And then separate from that, we went and advocated for a law. So we helped get a bill passed or introduced in the state of Texas, which turned into a law, which makes the sending of unsolicited lewd images illegal. I went and testified at the Senate unanimous yes vote. And now we are working on getting that passed in many other states and hopefully at the federal level as well. And so there's this approach to really building online advocacy and online guardrails, right? The world that you live in, you walk outside, it looks like you're in New York City. If you were to walk outside in the street right now, there are consequences for bad behavior, but you get on your phone and there's none. That's a problem. And so that's just something that Bumble's committed to.
I think that's terrific. I mean, being able to create change from being on the front line, it's so important what you're doing, and you're rising to that challenge. And I can see, even as we think about that, so you have some conflict, right? Because then there's the users, the ones that are sending the lewd photos, so there's a conflicted balance. And then there's shareholders, right? Now you're a public company, and managing those different constituencies, that's the responsibility of the senior tech leadership. Right. So that is something that do you talk about internally, like the users and the shareholders and what our moral ethical values are? Is that?
Yes, absolutely. But there's a very simple answer. If you treat your customers well and your customers are happy, your shareholders will be happy.
Exactly.
And that's just the simplistic answer and the right answer. And this notion of, our shareholders, what are we going to do if we take a stance against this and our customers are on? Well, here's the thing. If you build ethically from day one and you lay the foundation with clear guardrails and rules from day one, then your customers aren't pissed off when you start to take a stance. Let's just use a real life example. Let's say you were a bar and you allowed from day one really rowdy behavior. You allowed people to throw their beer bottles across the wall, and that was what was allowed, and that's why people came there. Well, then all of a sudden, several years in, you say, hey, you know what, guys? No more. Where you have to behave well here. Of course, you're going to piss those people off because they only went there to be able to do that. But if you build a physical space where you come in and you treat each other well and it's respectful, and all of a sudden women are like, oh my gosh, this is a safe place. I love it here. I'm going to keep coming here. When you get that one person that walks in the door that throws the beer bottle against the wall and you say, hey, buddy, get out. Guess what? the rest of the community is so happy because they were there for good intention. And so your shareholders are happy because you keep it a safe ecosystem. So we're not trying to reverse engineer a problem. We're trying to just reinvest in something that we've always been intentional about. And our margins and all of our metrics are actually driven by our mission. Like that is what makes this a successful business. And I think, other founders can take this into account, that you don't have to choose one or the other. You can have both, but it has to be intentional. It has to be foundational.
No, this is why we're so happy to be a shareholder. I mean, you've thought so deeply about these different issues and these challenges, and I just love hearing how you put the user first and you put the ethics there, and know that good things happen when those line up, and policing that is so important. So that leads me to ask, where do you stand on regulation for tech platforms? How do we balance that consumer protection with freedom of speech or expression?
Yeah, and I think I have to be very delicate here because I only want to speak on behalf of Bumble.
Sure.
But what we are committed to is when we agree on our terms and conditions and our guidelines, right? So if we say no body shaming here, which is a stance we have taken very recently, no body shaming, no fat shaming, no health shaming, no ability shaming.
Great.
If we have agreed to that and you violate that, we don't see that as a violation of freedom of speech. We see that as a violation of our terms and conditions, and you got to go. And so we are very particular about that. And what's fascinating is when we have taken these stances, whether it's banning guns from the platform or banning hate symbols or banning all of these bad things that happen out there, it's some of our best days ever from a performance standpoint because people don't want to be abused. Like it's not a news flash. Like this is just human instinct. People don't want to be abused. And if you help people come and behave better, it's actually better for the person that maybe would have wanted to be the abuser. So another great example, you usually see a lot of bad behavior from anonymous customers, right? So anonymity has this fascinating consequence of just engineering nastiness. Another real life example, if you drive down the road and you've tinted windows, you probably have a higher chance of like honking at people, right? Yep. But if you have a convertible and everyone can see you, you probably are going to like wave and like say, oh, you can pass me. You're going to behave really well because you have to be so exposed and so accountable. And so we've tried to engineer that along the way is how do we make sure that you are who you say you are so that you'll just intrinsically behave better. And so when we talk about regulation, it's a self-regulating opportunity, right? We put our stance in the ground and we don't have an issue with not allowing that behavior on our platform because it's quality over quantity, right? The good quality behavior will catapult into word of mouth. It will turn into customer acquisition strategy. And then that will be your long lasting good customer base versus just tons of people behaving poorly.
That makes so much sense to me. And when we think about, how as your partner, right, we think about the choose to challenge, this theme applies to investors as much as entrepreneurs. And when I think about that, you shared some of the things that you're doing as a company. Is there anything you think investors should be doing and to help that change and how we can be thinking about those things, especially in this time to bring about some of that change?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not an investor, so I can't make any, great investor commentary here. But I think a great way would be to really have internal metrics as a firm that are mission metrics or value metrics. So for example, if Honeycomb were to say, hey, we have these 3 metrics that even though we're looking at MAU or DAO or the MAU to DAO ratio, or I'm coming up with just top of line metrics, or what's their margins or what's their growth rate, well, then maybe there's 2 metrics that are mission metrics. Like, okay, well, what's their diversity score, right? How many representation, what's their representation of women on their leadership team or on their board? Or what is their approach to, if say it's a technology platform that's consumer facing, what's their approach to abuse and to harassment? And to have this almost internal metric that you use to understand the good that a business is having on society, or how they're subscribing to pushing things forward. So I don't know. Again, I'm definitely not an investor, as you can tell, but
No.
I think just having these metrics that count as well as all the other business metrics.
I think it's helpful. I mean, when we look at female-led businesses and we think about how we can be supportive of them, how can we show that returns could be great. It can be not only blind, but it can be important to empower female entrepreneurs. Success stories like yours really go a long way. Where other investors can start looking at it and thinking about it. And I think just shedding a light on it is at least at Honeycomb, is quite important to support female founders. And when I think about some of the lessons learned, I was fortunate enough to be an investor in Facebook before its IPO, and Sheryl Sandberg had some really wonderful commentary about how as you bring people up in your organization, anytime a senior partner decides to go out for a drink with a junior partner, if it's a man, make sure you're giving that exact same opportunity to a woman, right? If you're not doing that, if you're not doing the mentoring, those micro moments is what helps build careers. And that career building is something that we have to kind of constantly go for. And I think that being inclusive is really helpful too. And so, when we think about like who's leading and what teams are being built, those are some of the questions that I think when we think about product team, you mentioned engineering teams, like, what kind of diversity are we seeing? And then what kind of, that's some of the questions that I think investors can focus on, is like, how diverse is the team, the mindset. But I think that there's a lot of great growth ahead. I thought it'd be interesting just to talk a little bit about how you see things coming out of this pandemic. We talked about things being pulled 3-5 years ahead. But just going back to technology a little bit, what do you see as the drivers of growth in the future here?
Yeah, well, and before we move on, I love Sheryl, and I think that's a great point. She has been awesome on the nuanced ways to really give women more of a voice, and I think she's amazing, and she's been personally very supportive. So even women that support other women is such a big thing as well, and men supporting women too. So yes, you're right. The support system is so important. Coming out of the pandemic, so I think there's something really exciting here. I think you will probably see this beyond just the dating category, but this immersion of what we call phygital, so like physical meets digital, and the intersection of that. So as let's just say in a dream world, everyone was vaccinated and the pandemic's over and life is up to us to go back to. I think people have seen the true value of meeting people digitally first. Yeah. And being able to sort through two things, both noise and understand if they're compatible, right? That, as I said earlier, the information you get on someone from a dating app is 10x what you'll get from just seeing someone across the room, right? So that is so beneficial that I don't think any of us are ready to just throw in the towel on that. And beyond that, the opportunity to meet people beyond your walls, right? You really, truly, as I said earlier, at any given moment, you're only in a room, even if you're out at a crowded place, you're only in a room with, let's say maximum 100 people at a time. And that pool and that opportunity is so small when you start to sort through that. And so the opportunity and the access and the scale and the reach from online dating is here to stay. So I think what happens next is people meet digitally first.
Okay.
And they don't just go straight to the coffee shop, because that's also a waste of your time to just jump straight into the real world with someone you've never really heard their voice, or you've never seen the way they speak. You don't know if you have any chemistry. So I think you have a virtual date and you get to know each other virtually, spend some time on that. And then if you're comfortable and you feel safe, then you go and you meet. And I think where the dating app opportunity goes from here for Bumble is, how do we get you to that date? How do we suggest that date? How do we help you have fun on that date? And then how do we make sure you're safe through that experience? And then how do we stay with you on the next steps? How do we help you think about that next step of that relationship? And then once you found success, how do we help you think about building community around that, right? Who do you want to hang out with outside of that person you're dating? And so I think this opportunity to be your buddy on your entire journey back in the real world, or even just digitally, really it's really exciting, and that's what we're all really eager and awaiting over the next several quarters.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I always found just interesting is you're just on the front line and watching this change happen and even changing about how people interact. You mentioned to me, and I just want to share it with the audience because it's to get your perspective. This is such a special treat. But slow dating, the slow talking, like that was something that you said was a very pandemic thing. That do you think that'll continue? And maybe you want to talk a little bit about that and the date of sending Uber Eats to your date. I just thought was so amazing. Some of these stories and how people the human connection to connect is so important to them. But
yeah, absolutely. So slow dating is this phenomenon that has come out of the pandemic, which is basically people are going back to this old age of getting to know each other, kind of call it 10 years ago, where it was this slow approach. You have a phone call and then you maybe, get to know each other and you message a little bit. And it's this like really more
courtship.
Right. Yeah, it's courtship. And so that's been happening, but obviously through futuristic, mechanisms like video and audio and so on and so forth. So I think that stays. But I think the difference is if people feel safe to physically be in the same room, I think they're going to be more hesitant to, like I said earlier, just jump from a, hey, how are you? What's up? Okay, cool. Coffee shop, 3 p.m. Great. See you there. That I don't think comes back. I think that slow date is here to stay. And I think it's baked into the physical return. So I think you see each other, you meet each other, you kind of get to know each other, you have this slow courtship. And then finally you see each other in real life. But then I even think the courtship continues. I think this quality versus quantity approach will be here to stay. I think that we went through a phase where it was very casual, right? There was a few years of this like hyper casual behavior where someone could be going on 6 or 7 Bumble dates or whatever dates or any other dates a month or so, in whatever time frame you want to apply to that. And I think it leans more into quality. And I think this pandemic has shown us the power of real relationships.
Yes.
And having real quality relationships in our lives, not just something for a night or a weekend or a month. And so I think we'll see that really stick. And I think that applies to friendships as well. I cannot stress enough how important our friendship approach is as well. The fact that nearly 10% of the audiences from the dating audience is using friend finding as well. We are not just here to love someone. We're here to love our friends. We're here to learn from our friends and to share in our interests and to have somebody to talk to with our shared fears and struggles. And so I think the fact that Bumble can build this hive, if you will, well beyond love is really interesting. And it really helps you build community. And I think this pandemic has shown us that maybe the most important thing in life is really the community we have.
And one thing I always thought so interesting when you talked about the age group, I think that there's probably a notion, for our audience, this is just for young people like your age, Whitney, but your vision and what you're seeing is a bit broader on the spectrum of age, right?
Absolutely. Grandmothers, mothers, and daughters, they're all using Bumble. And that's something we hear all the time. So you'll have a college age or young professional woman who found her love on Bumble, comes home, tells her single mom, gets mom on Bumble. Mom's now met her person on Bumble. And then mom tells her mom, who's a widow or has gone through, kind of years of being single, and it felt like she would never meet anyone again. And all of a sudden she's on Bumble. And so this whole family is now, using Bumble. And the reason why it doesn't turn into this, like, why is my grandma on Bumble, is because you only see people in the age range that you're looking for. So the 18-year-old wouldn't necessarily be seeing their grandmother on this product, right? And so it creates these little micro hives and micro ecosystems so that everybody can enjoy it and everybody can use it in their own way.
Amazing. Well, I think the audience can understand why Bumble is such an important part of the Honeycomb portfolio. But Whitney, this was so fun. This last year has brought unprecedented change, and you really helped people stay connected and build new relationships in a meaningful way. Thank you for sharing so much of your story. You're a change maker, and we wish you so much continued success in the future. And for the audience members, thank you for spending part of your day with us. And iConnections will turn it back to you. Bye all. Thank you, Whitney.
You're the best. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.